name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham.
I'm Batman.
Hey now, welcome to episode number 28 of the Batman on Film Social Hour. This is both a video and a audio podcast version of this show. And since if you watch our first interview with Mr. Tim Sheridan, which Ryan will introduce here in just a second, along with the rest of us, you know that he was here previously to talk about Batman: The Long Halloween Part 1. And Ryan is a super fan of both the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb original graphic novel, but also he is a super fan, like myself, with the animated adaptation, which I've said this, and I'm not saying it just because you're here, Tim. I think it's up there at the top as a whole movie. It's up there at the top with some of the best animated Batman movies. I mean, I'm talking Mask of the Phantasm. I've got 3 posters from animated films hanging in my office. Mask of the Phantasm. This is my new one back over here with both Long Halloween covers together, and I've got Lego Batman. So that's it. That this movie had to make my wall. So with that said, Ryan, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thanks again for allowing me to come on here to interview our guest of honor. But we also have a third interviewee here. It's Micah Ramey. Micah, give a quick hello there.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I feel like out of everyone here, I'm probably the most non-recommended. Probably, my forte isn't that great so far. So I'm honored to be here. I'm probably going to be mostly a listener, like all of you out there. So I'll interject, I guess, when I can. But yeah,
not qualified.
I'm not qualified. There you go. That's the best word to use.
All right. It was great having you on, Micah. Thanks. But returning, giving us his time yet again, is Mr. Writer Extraordinaire of the Batman: The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2, Superman: Man of Tomorrow, as well as some. He's been having a hell of a month because also recently dropped on Netflix, Masters of the Universe, as well as Transformers: War for Cybertron. And last time I interviewed him, I mentioned but never got into it, he wrote a fantastic short of Sergeant Rock. It's Mr. Tim Sheridan. Tim, thank you again for coming back on Batman on Film.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Ryan, Bill, Micah, let's do this. Let's talk about this stuff. Listen, by the way, when they add extraordinaire to your title, it's pretty much over at that point. Like, I probably should just pack it in. But I appreciate it.
All right, so this is Tim Sheridan's final interview, apparently.
Yeah, this is it. You were here for it.
He has peaked. If you were to peak, which I highly doubt that you have, but this would definitely be a great swan song of The Long Halloween. Because as Bill mentioned, I'm super fan of the story. It is my favorite Batman story of any medium, and for both parts, of course, there's a little like, as long as it sticks the landing. With part 2, then this definitely has the potential to be the greatest Batman animated story I think that has been produced yet. And I really thought you stuck the landing. So with that for you, and kudos to you and everyone involved, that Long Halloween as a packaged unit is fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you for saying that. And it means a lot to me to hear it from, real super fans of the book, like me and like everybody who made this movie. When I think back to the day that I said, guys, I can't do this story any justice in one 72-minute movie, which was what the original plan was. I said, you gotta give me more real estate. I gotta do this in 2 movies. And everybody agreed, right? So we did the 2 movies. And then fast forward to this year, this summer, when the first movie comes out and people really responded well to it. And then all I heard after that was, you better stick the landing. You better stick the landing. And it reminded me of when Conan O'Brien took over for Letterman on Late Night, and he had the cold open for his first show was him walking to work and everybody saying, "You better be as good as Letterman." You know, I was just like, oh man, I just really hope people are with us for part two. Part two is a different kind of movie in a lot of ways than part one. You know.
For sure. And before we get into details, I want to throw out a definite heavy spoiler warning. The digital release has been out. The physical release has been out now. So if you haven't watched it yet, we're going to spoil it from here on out. And with that said,
spoilers.
I want to jump right to the ending.
What?
Great
Who
place.
starts at the ending?
Because
mystery writers, that's it.
So at what stage in the process did you figure out the direction you want to take in the identity of Holiday?
Well, okay. So when we first started, I talked to friends of mine. I wish I'd known you guys. I would have talked to you guys about this. I talked to friends about, like, tell me about what you think about The Long Halloween, and specifically, who's Holiday? And because what's fascinating, one of the things that I love about the book that I always felt was part of the story, and people will argue with you about this, is that the ending, the solution of the mystery is, in my opinion, quite ambiguous and is left. There are multiple ways to interpret it. There are probably unreliable narrators telling you, that they did it or didn't do it or whatever. And it ends up being kind of an ink blot, a Rorschach. So people kind of decide for themselves. And very few people I talk to say, and in the beginning, nobody I talked to about this when I embarked on this said, yeah, it's kind of ambiguous. Nobody said that. People all said a different thing. They said,
really?
It's Alberto. They said, it's Gilda. They said, it's Harvey. They said, it's a combination of those three, or it's a combination of two of those. And, when Butch Lukic, our supervising producer, and Jim Krieg, producer, and I sat down and talked about it, we thought, is that going to, that's a fascinating sort of way to write a book. Mm-hmm. And it's a really interesting way to solve a mystery. And it works in The Long Halloween. If you divorce it from Dark Victory, which we did, we said, we're going to go into this as if we're doing this in 1997, 98, and we don't know anything else that's possibly going to be in the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb canon. So if we come at it like that, honestly, how would we adapt this in 97, 98? And we thought that if for a movie, it would be a tough sell to not give you a clear solution. Mm-hmm. And then it came down to, well, what's the solution going to be? And we just felt, what you see is kind of our interpretation of the ink blot, because we all kind of agreed that we felt that Alberto in that book is somebody who wants so much to be a player that he's willing to say anything, maybe if not do anything. And so we felt like his story was questionable. And Gilda, if you read Gilda's, monologuing at the end of the book, it's very easily interpreted as she is rehearsing a cover story so that she can switch places with Harvey and take the fall for him, which implies that Harvey is. But she does say, let them think Alberto did it, which does imply that it's not Alberto, that she knows that it's not Alberto. So it's it's so ambiguous and really fascinating and interesting, but we decided very early, like at the very beginning of the process, to answer your question, that we were going to pick a lane for the movie, not to negate. We weren't going to make it Calendar Man, and we weren't going to make it Riddler, and we were never going to come in and upend the whole thing. We just said, let's pick a lane here from the available options that the book seems to provide for us. And some people will agree with us. Some people will absolutely disagree with us. And let's let the fun of our interpretation of it be that we chose to go down a certain road. Now, I think that there's still, personally, the way it was written, and I think maybe not so much the way it was produced, but I felt that there was still some ambiguity in the script that I wanted to kind of leave you with the impression that Gilda might still be a cover story at the end. But I think we kind of shied away from that in the production, and really, it's the photo of her and Alberto that she's going to chuck into the furnace that sort of seals it, I think, as being that she's telling the truth. If we didn't do that photo, I think you might be able to still argue that she could, just be making it up.
It put more emotion, or made it resonate more, her going after the Falcone family.
Yeah, it was also that was a tough part of the whole thing, because I was really nervous. It wasn't going to be Alberto for us, because we just didn't believe, based on reading just that book, that it would be Alberto. And we felt that we also wanted to, where we did want to sort of subvert expectations was to not, we wanted to really kill Alberto at the end of part 1. And I was even more explicit about it in the script than we ended up being in production. Like, there was literally no way that he was coming back from, I put it through the propeller on the thing.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And also, like, I wanted to show it.
I love that part.
Oh, I mean, you still made it at that point, just like in the book, though. We are all supposed to believe that Alberto's dead. So I was like, I mean, I know what I saw, but
There was a lot of hypotheticals that he really wasn't dead. I saw by a lot of fans. So,
and I think that if you know the story, and a lot of people know the book, you're expecting that he's going to come back. And so I wanted it to be fair play, in that when we didn't bring him back, you could go look back at that moment and say, they told us.
Yeah.
they told us he's gone. They're fishing parts of him out of the bay, out of the harbor. So we knew we wanted to subvert the expectation there a little bit. And if he wasn't going to be coming back, then it sort of pointed us in the direction of Gilda. I think that when you read that book, though, I'm very interested to know what your experience was in reading the book, because it's funny, it sort of changed for me over the years. I think when I first read it, I thought it was Gilda, and way back. And then I think I sort of, after reading Dark Victory, I think as when I thought, it was like, oh, it's Alberto. And nowadays when I read it, I feel like it's Harvey.
I could go with all of that for sure, because I've even, before the first part came out, I went back and reread the graphic novel, and then I'm going, okay, am I interpreting this differently than I did when I read it originally, or when the past times? And I even found myself Googling theories about who the holiday killer was, just to see what other ideas were.
How many people have you seen online who have been so underserved because they didn't read the book but Googled who is Holiday? Everybody, I saw so many people who were like, they changed the ending completely, and I'm like, did we? Like, don't just Google who is Holiday, because they're going to lead you down a particular road that may or may not be true if you're just looking at the book. It's hard when you factor in Dark Victory. That's the thing.
I was going to ask Micah, because Micah read it. Micah, of course, is different vintage than me, certainly, obviously, but he read it as a kid and reread it again before the movie, right?
Yeah.
Did you have?
So what was your experience when you read it as a kid and when you read it as an adult?
When I read it as a kid, obviously as a kid, you don't understand or pick up on most things, but I interpreted it as it was Gilda. I think that was just because she was at the last part. So I thought at the time the writers were trying to signify, like, this is the end of the book, so obviously this is who it is. Mm-hmm. But before I watched part 1, I reread it again to catch up, and I kind of interpreted it as it was everyone. Like, everyone was kind of Holiday. Like, they took the like Harvey Dent obviously wanted to do, as he was losing his mind. I felt like he just kind of took the mantle of Holiday so that way he could have an outlet before he fully transformed into Two-Face. And then obviously I think maybe he had conversations with Gilda behind the scene, and she didn't want him to, you know, get the blame, or she didn't want his work to not be done. So she kept going on, and that's why she was taking out the rest of the family. But I always, now it's even thinking about it, like, I don't even know if I'm right, but I think that's the point, you know, like anyone could, like, really, you could justify any of them, just one person being Holiday or all of them, or, and that's what's great, is having the conversation, you know, like having this whole episode just to talk about it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. And I think maybe Jeff and Tim are going to, like, you know, in the special this October, are gonna, like, you know, tell us something. I don't know. I do think, though, that as I remember it, Dark Victory made it, I think people felt from Dark Victory that Alberto was definitely Holiday. And it was because, I think, because like the first line of the book is Batman saying Alberto Falcone was Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But in the way Long Halloween ends, he has every reason to think that that's true. So I don't know.
See, it's such a strength in the ambiguity, though, between, and just like you did for the movie, same, you know, match the strength of the book, of it's so ambiguous that it makes it fun to revisit. And okay, let's view it as it's all Gilda. Does it match up? Okay, let's view it's hard.
We had to make some adjustments to make that make sense.
It really,
yeah.
And it just really makes it fun that way, because even now, I can't tell you how many times I've read the book. It's 25 years since it's come out, and I'm like, I still don't know who I think was Holiday at which point. And I think the movie does that a really great way too. In it made me view part one differently. As soon as I watched part two, I immediately went back and watched part one. And it definitely made me view scenes a little bit more different, of when Gilda and Harvey are talking, and I forget the line exactly, when they're on the back porch and Harvey even goes, it seems sentimental, to almost like an angry, and then now it's like, oh, it's because she's talking about Alberto. And then I get to be more like, and then something with her being pregnant to Barbara and stuff. And it's all just adding up of like, oh, this is really now informing that revelation in part two, which I thought was great.
There was a lot of, thank you. There was a lot of stuff that, I mean, I love writing something where you have to go back and rewatch or watch the first part again, and you pick up new things. And that was part of the writing of this, was I wanted almost every line to be interpreted possibly one of two ways, two sides of the coin. And there's this scene in Gotham Square during New Year's where Gilda and Harvey are having an argument. She says, "Why can't you be more like?" And you see him drop into like Two-Face. He's like, more like who? And a lot of people had watched that and commented on it and saying, "Oh, she's talking about Alberto, and he's talking about Alberto." And but from my perspective, it could be that she's saying that, but I think she's saying, "Why can't you be more like Big Bad Harv?"
Okay.
Like, why can't you be more like your other side? And drops into it for a second, you know? She married the guy who she thought was going to be Two-Face, who was going to take down the people who stole her life from her in the movie. And he turned out to be Harvey Dent, you know, upstanding white knight. And that didn't get her what she needed. You know,
so this is just, since we're talking about this now, things are coming to my mind. Okay, like Batman at the end, he knows, but is there part of him that's trying to protect Harvey Dent?
There's so many people who are like, Batman would never just walk away and leave her and let her run free. I'm just like, guys, the movie ended. Like, you don't know what he did next. Yeah. The point of that scene is we don't know what he's going to do with her. We don't know if he's going to turn her in that moment. We don't know if when he walks upstairs, Gordon and his men are coming downstairs, you know? So, you know, Batman, we wanted to make, one of the things about the book, and this is just sort of in crafting a sort of a detective story, you know, on film, we felt that Batman in the book arguably doesn't really solve the crime, doesn't really solve the thing. And he doesn't have the Poirot moment of saying, which we give to Gilda, where she explains what happened and why she did what she did. But we don't have Batman solving the mystery for everyone. And that's sort of the kind of thing you expect when you're watching, I think, a mystery and a detective story, and you expect your guy to do that. So we needed to put Batman into that scene and not just have her monologuing, which would have been strange anyway on a movie. It worked in a comic book, but it would have been weird in the movie. And have her telling that story to him, but having him have already figured it out. Like, he realized, he finally put the last piece together, and he tells her this when she killed Maroni, and when he saw the way Dent reacted to protect Holiday. Like, I think that's where it finally all started cooking together. I mean, obviously the Oxford thing was a little bit of a piece of the puzzle, a clue for him as well, that he finally put together. So we just wanted Batman to have more participation in the solution of the mystery, even if he wasn't going to do the Hercule Poirot, revelation of how it all worked. And then ultimately, and also imply that he had figured it out, he had solved it. Because, and the reason for that is that in this movie, look, there was a thing that we came up against in the beginning where we thought, well, this is supposed to be like a sequel to Year One. It's traditionally thought of as Year Two for Batman, yet all of his villains are behind bars. So what is that about? And why does it take him a year to figure out the Holiday thing? And also, he doesn't really figure it out himself, really, in the end. So we're like, well, all that added up to us to, well, it's Year Two, and maybe he thought putting on a costume and scaring criminals straight was what his job was going to be, and he's coming to find that he needs to be a detective, and this is his first real swing at it. And so there's a learning curve for him. And so in order for that to be satisfying as a narrative in the movie, we felt that he needed to start in that place, and he needed to end in a place where you felt that, oh, okay, he's getting the hang of this detective thing. He put some clues together, and figured out the solution to the mystery. And that's how he's going to start on his journey as becoming the world's greatest detective.
Now, in the last time you were on, I know we discussed about how Harvey's allies, Gordon and Batman, sort of armed him literally with a gun and a coin. Yeah. And you promised that there would be more information in part 2 about the coin. Can you remember where the idea of making that basically the whole lifeline of that coin, when did that idea even generate in your mind?
Well, I mean, one of the things that before Long Halloween ever came out, I was a big fan of the Batman Annual number 14 from 1990, which was that great. In fact, it's my Twitter profile picture right now. Is that
the Neil Adams cover, right?
Yeah. And that story shares a lot of, with Long Halloween. And so those stories together kind of informed for me, Two-Face and who he is and how he came to be. And I don't remember, it's been so long since I've read it now though, but I don't remember. I feel like that was the story where we learned about his father, but maybe it was a different book. Maybe I'm confusing it with a different book. But where his father gave him the coin, and his father used to flip the coin about, just to decide whether he was going to hit him or whatever, right? I think that is how it was. And so that was, I always loved that the coin had a more meaningful origin for Harvey. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I got into scripting part 2, I didn't have that idea of it coming from Falcone until I was scripting part 2, and I was working on that scene, and I wanted to flesh out that scene a little bit, because really that's one of the key themes we really wanted to draw out of the movie, from the book into the movie, was the idea that, I think I've talked about this before, that that the movie, the story is about service to Gotham City and how it affects the families that built Gotham City, and they're keeping it running. The Falcones, the Waynes, the Dents, the Gordons, and I wanted to have that early scene between where we in the book we cut away, right? But I wanted to keep the camera rolling and see what happens next. And Bruce talks to Carmine, and the idea that not only does the coin end up getting into Bruce's pocket, and then that ends up getting into Two-Face's pocket, but also that Falcone is the one who plants the idea in Bruce's head that criminals are superstitious, you know?
Yeah. All we get is all we take. That's a good line. That's good. Yeah.
That's a real Carmine sort of mentality, isn't it? Like, you know, and it's hard to argue with, you know. All we get is all we take. And so, you know, take what you want. You see him do that throughout the two movies too. I was doing a live tweet of the movie, and I was like, man, part one, I said, Carmine does a lot of speech giving. He stands up and gives a lot of speeches in this movie, doesn't he? Or these movies. And I was like, I think the reason for that is because he's somebody because all we get is all we take, because he is somebody who will take the stage. He doesn't wait for somebody to hand him the mic. It's why he is who he is, why he is the head of, you know, of why he runs Gotham City, because he took it. And that's sort of the lesson that he gives to the costumed villains, you know, is you just have to take it, which is what Two-Face, you know, does in the end.
I thought you wrote a very intimidating and scary Carmine Falcone. For sure. I think it definitely fits in line with like the book, but I feel like, and I know that it's a different medium, he's just as equally or maybe even more scary in the movie than in the book.
Yeah, I wanted in the very beginning, I felt like it was important for him to kill one of his guys, you know, who would talk back to him. Poor Anthony, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people online are like, that guy, Anthony's going to be Holiday, you know. But no, I just felt like you got to know right away, these are bad dudes. Like, especially because he's scary, I think, but we really went further with kind of fleshing out his character and that family and trying to understand what makes them tick a little bit more and ultimately make them a little bit sympathetic. You certainly feel sympathy for Sophia and Alberto, the way that they interact with their father. But in the end, I felt it was important that every single one of those characters feel that they are doing the best thing they can do for their world, for Gotham City. You know, it needs Carmine, Bruce, Harvey, and Jim Gordon all have to feel that they are the heroes of this story. And so it meant that we went to kind of some complicated places with Falcone. But, you know, I don't think anybody's going to argue that he didn't get what he deserved ultimately.
So does part two also mark the end of the quote unquote regular organized crime component in Gotham with
organized crime to disorganized crime?
Yes, especially with Falcone kind of makes it happen by making a deal with the devil, so to speak. You know, he makes a deal with them. And look what happens.
And literally that coin goes right back into his pocket. You know, like he's ultimately responsible for everything and for his own downfall, which is so much more interesting dramatically, right? You can physically trace it with the coin. But also so is Batman, you know, and so is Gordon. You know, they all armed Harvey, who represents this next generation, this next kind of criminal that's going to take over and ultimately become the thing that Batman is going to have to fight for the rest of his life, probably. I can't keep talking about this without saying though that like everybody who worked on this movie, when everybody's kind of making the same movie and telling the same story, it makes things a lot better. And I think every one of the artists and certainly the actors. I mean, Titus Welliver brings depth and a sort of something really likable to Carmine that if you didn't have somebody like Titus doing it, could have easily he could have become this two-dimensional character. He could have just been a mustache twirling villain, which is so not interesting and wouldn't have worked he would have been a character in in his own movie in the middle of this other thing. And so we were very lucky to have him. And I say that about the entire cast. I mean, Josh Duhamel does the best work I've ever seen him do. And I was like, people are going to buy him as Harvey. Absolutely. But are they going to buy him as Two-Face? And then he came into the booth. He was so good. There was so much depth. All the work he had done as Harvey was still underneath all the stuff he was doing for Two-Face. And we just had really smart actors and smart directors and just, artists, everybody. It was just really, it made, my life easier. I mean, I write the thing and then send it down the river and hope that everything works out, and I just think they did a marvelous job.
When do you see the final product?
When you
see
do.
it? Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
curious.
I mean, when I'm a writer, if I'm a producer, I'm involved in the process. I can sort of give notes and what have you, but nobody wants my notes when I'm just the writer. So like it goes through the whole process, and ultimately when I'm about to go out and promote it, I mean, many people have seen it before I do. They'll send me a copy of it. They'll send me a link to watch it, and I'll watch it then so that I'm prepared to be able to answer questions, because look, things change during production sometimes. That's some things. Sometimes the movie in your head and what you put on paper makes total sense, but when you get into production, it runs too long. You have to truncate things. There were a few things that we didn't get into the movie that I really felt were like, I feel like Jim Gordon, the story of the Gordons focused more on Barbara Gordon in the second movie, and sort of the sacrifice of Jim Gordon's service to Gotham. We lost a couple of scenes throughout the process. Well, I think one of them at least was in the scripting phase, and at least one of them was in the production phase, that would have given us more Gilda, more Barbara, and we would have gotten some more understanding of how they were dealing with the concept of losing part of their family to Gotham City. So stuff like that, I wish that we could get it in there, but that's not the way it works. Like it doesn't always all fit. You ultimately, somebody else is in charge of figuring out how do we tell the story in the most economical way and get across the points that we need to get across. Ultimately, it's not Gordon's story. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I was telling the story, part of the story of Dark Victory in the script of Long Halloween, which was explicitly something we didn't want to do. And I was setting up the dominoes for the people who would be like, I know where things are headed for Gordon and his wife, and ultimately that wasn't going to be part of the story that we were telling here. So really, what was it doing there in the first place? I think that was just me overwriting it a little bit, so it had to go.
So you said that people don't want your notes, but now that we've deemed you writer extraordinaire, I think that's about to change, so prepare yourself. But back to Josh Duhamel really quick, because I totally agree with you in the acting, the voices, and Duhamel. I think in the book, when Harvey gets the acid in his face, and Bruce's interior dialogue is, "I will never forget the sound of his screaming." Mm-hmm. And I think Duhamel in that scene of Harvey's scream, I think it's chilling. I think it's very emotive. You can really feel it there. It totally delivered how I'd always interpreted it in the book. And then for that voice, which, did he do the Two-Face voice all himself too? Did he get to that gravelly deep? Because that sounded awesome. That sounded exactly how I would expect. Basically, the animated series did it well. Big Bad Harv, of getting that sort of Two-Face. And I think
he was doing
totally delivered. That was so great. And I wondered how it was. Were you able to watch? You were watching him as he performed. How was that?
I was there for the records for him, and he was it was remarkable what he and Wes Gleason talked about with Butch Lukic was the idea of how his vocal cords would be affected by the acid. And so you get something very realistic sounding. I mean, I don't know that it is realistic, but it gives you the impression that it's very real. It's not just I'm a bad guy voice now. It's my voice has been physically affected by this acid, and what ultimately, obviously, what the acid does is simply reveals what is underneath the surface that has always been there for Harvey. And we we really spent time setting that up in this movie in a way that I think is done sort of between the lines in the book. We really needed to have those voices, that had that voice, in Harvey's head, talking to him, telling him. I mean, that whole courtroom scene is very much the way it plays out in the book, except that you're getting that inner dialogue or sort of monologue, I guess. It's that voice of Big Bad Harv talking to him. Somebody commented, that then a hospital scene is after that, and somebody commented that they love the when Two-Face says to Harvey, when the phone rings, he says, "I have to take this." That's one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. I was so glad somebody caught it and said it, because I just love that he's so polite in that moment. Excuse me. I think he should have been like, "Hey, can you hand me that?" Yeah, thanks.
I think to credit that, I also, just from my perspective, and I know it's just as a fan, not in there, but direction, writing, and performance is kind of to me a trifecta to really get the best for the story. And this version of Catwoman, I think, is definitely among my favorites interpretation of Catwoman, in which, yes, that's partially to you, that's partially to the director, but obviously rest in peace to Naya Rivera, which we talked about in the last time we spoke. And I just flat out, I think, adore this version of Catwoman.
I am here to tell you, and I mean, you can try to tell me that it's in the writing or in the direction or what have you. I am here to tell you that 100% of the credit for Catwoman being such a standout in these movies, as far as I'm concerned, is Naya Rivera. The kind of depth, the sort of innocent, but Cheshire Cat kind of quality. She's simultaneously this lovable, understandable little sister to you, the viewer, and at the same time, this total badass who is, constantly there to help Batman, to even rescue him. And that was written to be part of the idea of, the new version of Bruce's family, right? The idea of family, service to Gotham, what it does. It was sort of a hopeful note. I mean, you see, there's a reason why the two of them end up together in that last beat of the movie, because throughout the whole movie, we're seeing how while we're seeing how families are affected negatively by service to Gotham, we're also seeing how there can be a positive effect, and how the service to Gotham of Catwoman and Batman brings them together throughout the thing and brings them love and companionship. And I just think that, that's like an obscure thing that I'm writing in the background of the movie, but it doesn't work unless you have a Naya Rivera come in and make you absolutely fall head over heels for Catwoman. I wish she could have seen these movies. I wish she could hear us talk about it. I hope she can, and know that I just don't think it works. I don't think any of it would have worked without her. And I think she set a new standard. I think it'd be really hard to top, this her work as Catwoman. She, like everybody else, is somebody who I could have seen, on screen doing these roles, on camera. I'm angry that we're deprived of that. I'm angry at, the universe for that. But more sad than angry. And but what I hope that I get to live in for the rest of my days is my gratitude that we got to have her there, and that she lit up these movies with her work as Catwoman.
Absolutely.
Do you have a preference or an idea? Like, is there the fan, maybe even the writer in you, have like where would this story goes after the end of the Long Halloween Part 2, or do you think it's more perfect just the way it ended, where fans can write the story in their heads afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. It's hard because it wasn't something we thought about. It's not something I thought about when I was writing it, because I very intentionally wanted it to be, this is the end of the story is right here. This is it. And we're not going to go anywhere else with it. It was just sort of an exercise for me to just make sure that
because you kind of know, just on, based on the Batman history, Batman mythos, even, Dark Victory, whatever, what can come, even though it's not specific what's going to come in a story. But, like Christopher Nolan told me once about how he leaves films, ambiguous quite a few times, often in his work, even with Batman Begins. He had really no idea about the Dark Knight, if he would do the Dark Knight. But the whole Joker card at the end of Batman Begins between Batman and Gordon was that people can write the story in their head of what happens next. I guess what I'm trying to say is would you prefer it just for that to happen, or continue the story?
Yeah. I'll tell you specifically what sort of happened throughout this. So we kind of entertained the possibility that we might, if the movie was successful, when we were writing it, when we were creating it, the idea that, oh, well, if people really go for it, maybe we can do Dark Victory. And then that was early. And then Butch Lukic was tasked with making more movies that were not specifically just Batman stories. And so the Dark Victory question sort of faded away for a while. And then when Long Halloween 1 and 2 got held up in production and for release by Matt Reeves' movie, that we didn't even think Long Halloween would ever get released. Like, I didn't think it would. I thought it would never see the light of day. And so I'm very happy that it came out finally. But I used to say, when we were working on this and they were creating these absolutely beautiful assets, all those backgrounds and all that Gotham City stuff is so beautiful in these movies.
That's one of the things that Micah told me when he saw it after he watched it. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "It looked awesome."
Yeah, I mean, it does. Awesome. And it's tough because we were always going to be up against people saying, the note that drives me the craziest, which is, why would you even do it if it's not Tim Sale's style?
Yeah.
I'm like, you would never say that to Matt Reeves.
Sure.
Like, you would never. Like, I mean, these people work really hard and they're really great artists, and they're not forgists. I don't know what that is. They're not here to forge Tim Sale's art and try to pass it off like it's the real thing. They are geniuses. We had a guy doing designs for these characters early on who's a incredibly successful comic book artist named Otto Schmidt, who's was sort of created the first designs that then were sort of adapted for animation for these characters. I mean, Otto Schmidt is a powerhouse in his own right. So to come in and say Otto Schmidt needs to ape Tim Sale's style is just absurd on its face.
It's the same thing for me with the look of it, production design and the artwork, as it is with the stories. When you take a Long Halloween and you make a movie, or Gotham by Gaslight, even Hush and whatever, I prefer what y'all did with this, where it's an inspired by take,
Yeah.
because I've read the book
Right.
many
And
times.
you
I know
always
what
can.
happens. So
And-
and it's the same thing with the artwork. I don't need Tim Sale's artwork copied
There is
in
this
you know.
odd feeling among among certain fans that like they want this to be the new version of the thing.
Yeah.
They want to be able to, it's like they want to throw away the book and have this be the new version of Long Halloween or something. And then they're angry that it's not Tim Sale's style and it's not exactly, you know,
Yes.
what Jeff Smith or
Don't even get me started
yeah.
on fandom. That's a
So-
whole different tangent.
So, but I mean,
could go
those
down.
particular people, all I can say is, look, sorry, that's just not what we do. And also, I just don't believe in that. Like,
Yeah.
I think the point of the movies is to celebrate the book, which will always be the #1 version of The Long Halloween, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
No matter how much people like the movie, the book is, hopefully the movie leads you to the book or leads you back to the book. So that's just my philosophy on it. However, when we were in production, I would say to Chris Palmer, the director, all the time, I would say, gosh, we're creating all these beautiful assets for this world. It's a shame that, you know, we're not going to use them again, that they're just going to go live on a hard drive somewhere. And I said, could you imagine if we got to do, you know, a 10 episode, you know, I think at the time it was DC Universe, but HBO Max, let's say, series, you know, of another mystery, an original one that doesn't have to be Dark Victory, but could take
Oh, that would
place
be awesome.
in the world that we've created here. And you know, to me that, but you know, that the whole team was sort of moving on and doing more movies. So I think if that team was going to be available, I wouldn't do it with anybody else. I think if that team was going to be available and wanted to do that, and somebody like Max wanted to do it, I would have been there in a second to try to weasel my way in and be a part of that as much as I could.
I ask you one more question, and then we'll let you get out of here soon. Speaking of what comes next and the possibility, can one watch Batman Year One, and if they want, say the sequel is the Long Halloween film,
Well,
or,
I mean,
or no, or is
I
it
don't
just
think you-
two different? You know, I know there's different actors, different voice actors, and it looks different and so forth. But because you
I don't
brought,
think
I thought about it when you talked about, you know, the Long Halloween being a sequel to Frank Miller's Year One. So
I don't think you need to watch
No,
Year One,
absolutely.
or read it, but I think you should if you haven't. You should read it and watch it because they're both, you know, the book and the adaptation are just terrific. But I don't think you need to. But I think that you know, like I'm you know, like there's a reason why I'm wearing, you know, the Batman Book Club shirt.
How about that?
whoop, whoop.
Because I say read all of it, you know. I mean, and if it doesn't all match up perfectly continuity wise in terms of the book and the movies or voices or actors or things like that, you know, like use your imagination because you know, pieces of these things all inform the other things. I mean, you certainly can't watch The Dark Knight and get the Long Halloween experience fully out of it, but it's absolutely inspired by and inspires what we did in the movie. You know, it's all of this stuff works in tandem as part of the multiverse of these stories, and I think that you know, the more you can sort of take in, the better off you be. I think you know, catching Year One first is a great way to sort of understand that it's early days for Batman. There's some people who haven't quite picked up that this is Year Two for him in these movies. You know, people will be like, well, Batman's a, you know, why is he such a bad detective? And why is he getting his butt kicked? Why is Catwoman faster than him? And you know, I'm like, yeah,
I mainly ask it as the fan in me, because if I ever want to do like a marathon, I can put in Year One and then watch part 1 of Long Halloween and then part 2 of Long Halloween, you know?
Listen, I'm not gonna tell anybody to not do that, especially if it means they're gonna buy the Long Halloween 1 and 2, which I hope people do, because when you do that, I don't make any money off it, but when you do it, when you buy it, and you know, and you know, not rent it or steal it, you can rent it, but if you buy it, then the powers that be know that this is the kind of content you want. There's only one way to vote
Yeah.
for the content you want,
Yeah.
and it's to buy it. That's just the world we live in. And if people don't, then we're not going to get more stuff like this. We're just not, because then they'll get the message loud and clear. Oh, people didn't buy it, so they don't like this. They don't want this direction.
So this okay, Batman related. Just at the top off the top of your head, your favorite Batman comic book story. It can be an individual issue. It can be a graphic novel.
This is right up my alley. Let me hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, favorite is probably the first story that wasn't the first one I read, but the first time I knew that I was going to be a lifelong Batman fan, which was the year 3 arc.
Wow. Nice.
leading into Lonely Place of Dying. That to me was, as a kid, informed everything about sort of what I think about Batman and what I think about DC and storytelling in general. It was around the same time that this movie, Transformers the movie, happened in cinemas, and I was learning about big stakes and consequences. Marv Wolfman and Denny O'Neil and all those guys were taking a world that had been established and built and characters that had been around, and sort of showing you how the chickens come home to roost, or the robins. And that was huge. That was just huge to me. I mean, that story is big to me. At one point I pitched doing a movie adaptation of that storyline. And for a little while we were for a little while it was on the books, I think. I don't know if they'll ever do it, but at one point it was entertained. Yeah, now that's, for me, if I had to pick something, it's that run, that Marv Wolfman sort of run in the comics.
Favorite animated television series.
Favorite animated television series that I didn't work
Batman.
on?
Which it's Batman.
If it's only Batman,
yes,
then it's BTAS. It's Batman the
Okay.
Animated Series. But if it's shows that include Batman, I have a soft spot for the first job I ever had in television, which was Justice League Action.
Oh, here you
where
go.
we got Conroy
Okay.
back to play Batman, and I got to sit there in the booth with Kevin Conroy being Batman, and like just starting out, and Hamill as Joker, just starting out in this business. It was so it's hard for me to say anything, but Justice League Action, which like any of the shows that have come since BTAS, owes a lot to it. I mean, look at Long Halloween 1 and 2. I mean, it is completely a part of the legacy of Batman the Animated Series, which Butch Lukic came up under Bruce Timm. His sensibilities are completely informed by Batman the Animated Series, and you see it all over these movies. I think why not? It's funny when people talk about why you should have made this look like Tim Sale. I'm like, yeah, but look at how much it looks like Batman the Animated Series on the big screen, more, and in a way that has evolved from Mask of the Phantasm into something that even gets us even closer to live action.
Okay.
It's
now,
sort
now
of
I can put in Mask of the Phantasm and watch that before
I
Long
think
Halloween.
stylistically,
Yeah.
If you can stand that much sort of, slow burn mystery, then yeah, I'd put in Phantasm and then put in Long Halloween, and just follow sort of the Butch Lukic of it. I think, I think, I've talked about this before. I don't know if I talked about it with you guys, but I wrote the script as a live action script.
You told us
came
that.
at it. Yeah, I came at it like this should be written as if we're going to produce it in live action. And I think that's the reason I came at it that way, is because Butch Lukic said he wanted to come at it as let's do this like it's live action. Let's do this like it is an art house Batman movie that not everybody is going to go see. You're going to go to that small theater in town that gets the weird imports. It's going to be, you're going to feel really, like you're cooler than everybody else for going to see this one. So I wanted to write it in a way that it could have been produced that way. And I think you see in the animation that is how they approached that as well. That this is a movie that could exist in live action. It just happens to be animated. I really can't stand that there's any sort of line between animation and live action in a story like this. That I can't believe people would go to Long Halloween 1 PG-13 and Part 2 rated R and think that they're getting a cartoon for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think that I think animation has grown up, and
Sure.
people should
Oh, I remember when they hijacked Batman Beyond Return of the Joker movie because it was too violent and
Yeah.
and took out, changed the whole scene where the Joker gets shot. One last one suggestion, and then I have one question you brought up.
I'm sorry. Did I put
comics.
the suggestions box out, Bill? What is
No, no, you would just suggested the taking a Batman story and turn it into an animated movie. I'm just saying, anybody's listening, Batman 251, 1973, the Joker's 5-way revenge.
Oh, really?
It's a very simple one-issue story, but it would make for it could be duly inspired by a thing. Do you know the cover? It's one of the most famous Batman covers. It's the Joker holding the card with Batman. It's Neil Adams. I would show. Well, you know what?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Inside the office.
Say again. Which one is it?
Batman 251, 1973. The Joker's 5-way revenge.
Oh, yeah. Of course I know that cover. Yeah.
Yes. There it is. Micah's got it. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
wait.
sir.
Let me come back.
Yeah. Oh, one more
Okay.
time, Micah.
Oh.
Hang on. Don't do anything. We're doing technology here. There it is. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
That's great.
That'd be an awesome one of the additional shorts.
That's the whole reason why I'm here for the show, just for this. This is my moment.
And so my last question, I'll stop talking. Then I went on a roll.
I know. Micah hasn't even gotten a question in yet.
I will let Micah. Favorite live action Batman movie?
Favorite live action Batman movie is Batman 89. But I mean, how dare you make me choose?
That's
Because-
I'm asking
because-
tough questions here.
Because Batman the movie is phenomenal.
Yeah.
and The Dark Knight is phenomenal. So I mean, how dare you make me choose? But if I have to, it's definitely 89, and probably some of that is the nostalgia factor for me of being a kid and my dad taking me to the theater to see that movie, and at a time when I had just really heavily gotten into Batman comics at that point. So it was kind of everything.
I get it. I'm a Batman fan because of the Adam West TV show. The reruns, right when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and
Batmobile back here.
yeah, gotcha. So I get it. I appreciate it. That's one of the reasons why Batman people are shocked when they hear me say it, because I like the dark Batman, but Batman, the Brave and the Bold animated series is my favorite animated Batman because it's such a love letter to the Batman history and
Listen,
mythos.
Brave and the
Yeah.
Bold is fantastic. I've gotten to work with James Tucker quite a bit, and he's phenomenal, first of all, and that's his sensibilities all over that show. I mean, it's just beautiful, and it's a lot of fun. And I love, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about Diedrich Bader too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Diedrich played Booster Gold on Justice League Action to absolute perfection in a way that I want to work with him on everything. He's in Masters of the Universe Revelation. He plays King Randor. So yeah, no, and of course he's doing Batman on the Harley Quinn show as well.
Yeah.
That show's incredible. Batman 66 though, to me, there's one show now that I think is a modern show that is what I consider the best version of like a comic book realized on TV. The first and only time that existed in my mind before was Batman 66. Batman 66 really realized, Batman comics, a particular kind of comics, and I think the comics took a lot from Batman 66, in that time.
Yes.
But I think that we saw a synergy between comics and TV then. I think Stargirl is like that now for me, where Stargirl feels, and I told this to Jeff Johns, I was like, Stargirl feels to me that it is the most representative of a comic book realized for TV, and like successfully in terms of how you tell the story and how you present the characters. And I just love watching it. It's every time it's on, I'm just, yes, more of this, please. So right. Batman 66 was not since Batman 66, as far as I'm concerned, has there been a comic book TV show that really felt like a comic book translated to television. Micah, come on, say something. What's going on?
He's going to drop the bomb here. Here we go.
Why did you ruin The Long Halloween?
Yeah, canceled.
Canceled. This is how it goes. Have you been are you under instructions to not speak? Is that what happened? Bill, what did you say?
Nothing. He's his own man.
I know
Hold up your questions. Write them down. Hold
yeah.
on.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting us be a part of your TED Talk, or I guess your Tim Talk. You should probably brand that. Maybe you can do something. But yeah, you kind of answered the questions that I had. But the one thing that I like that you talked about is you wrote it as if it was a live action film. Were there any inspirations you looked at that weren't Batman related? Like, I kind of felt like some David Fincher vibes in the film. So if you look at things like Seven or Zodiac, I was just kind of interested in the writing process. If you looked at like other films that weren't Batman related.
Some of that really is where the artists, come in, where they were looking at. I mean, I know Butch was looking at a lot of film noir and sort of getting an idea for the aesthetic from that. I made a really conscious choice in the beginning. I said, I don't want to impose a logic upon this that is not The Long Halloween from the book. So in the beginning, they started, saying, well, here are some titles of some film noir to look at, and then draw inspiration from while writing the script. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I am going to adapt this book as best I can for the screen. So in terms of the script, I try to avoid as much as possible. But and I think that where you see Godfather sort of imagery and references, a lot of that is Butch Lukic. Sometimes in the scripting process, he asked herself, like, I did not initially have anyone refer to Carmine Falcone as Godfather. Because in my mind, the Roman is his godfather. That's what you refer to him as. But Butch wisely said, no, we should make that early on. Let's make that parallel clear to the audience and have people refer to him that way. And then you go on to see where there is inspiration from at least the first movie in Long Halloween 1 and 2. Butch is a guy who lives, breathes, and eats movies, and he knows so many movies and so many moments. So hopefully you'll have a chance. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to him. Have you?
We have not.
No.
Hopefully one day you'll be able to get him on here and he can really tell you about.
Yeah, Gary's slacking. He needs, we need.
He can tell you about. He's just busy is the problem. Butch is, he's got making movies, But I can't wait to watch that. I want to hear some of the real specific cinematic inspiration that he took in the process, because I'm sure there's stuff we're all missing. He's going to say, oh yeah, this is because of this movie, and this looks like this because of this whole thing that I wanted to do.
So I could probably talk to you all day about this kind of stuff, but I want to be respectful of your time, of Bill's time, of Micah's time. I don't respect my
No,
time.
this
so
is
that's
why we
kind of
did
whatever,
this.
But
This is why we did this on a Sunday, so I had time to talk to you guys.
so I wanted basically a comment and then a question. And so I'll go with the comment first. That I was really looking forward to the Scarecrow and Mad Hatter scene. I loved the Scarecrow Batman out in the woods scene. I thought that was awesome. I hope that was really fun to write. And I don't think we get enough Mad Hatter. So, I mean, he was included just as much as he is in the story, and I thought it was great. I really enjoyed that. So all of that was great because Scarecrow is one of my favorite Batman villains. And then for my question, you said how it's obvious that it's almost coming full circle to me in the sense of The Long Halloween inspired The Dark Knight. Did The Dark Knight inspire you for The Long Halloween, specifically in the Maroni transfer there in part 2? Because I just quickly thought of, man, this is almost like the Harvey transfer in The Dark Knight, but also has, obviously, it connects to the story of the book too. So I don't know if that was in your mind at all, if you remember, or anything.
This is a terrific example of being an intellectual property thief. No, because I don't remember consciously thinking about The Dark Knight. What I knew we needed to do was create a more dynamic sequence for the movie than what happens in that scene in the book, which is beautiful in the book and works in the pages of the comic book. But we needed to kick up the pace and have a real action beat there, just in terms of the pacing. And so, you know, I, thinking I'm a genius, come up with this prisoner transfer thing going on across the, you know, which you know, it's just in terms of the truck and the, you know, and all that stuff. And then later on, it was pointed out to me. They're like, oh yeah, this is a lot like the Dark Knight. I'm like, well, I guess that makes sense. Where the Dark Knight figured in was less in terms of inspiration and more in terms of, is there anything I need to avoid? I thought, you know, the money in the Falcone warehouse was really a worrisome thing it's amazing what worried me when I first started on this. And I was like, oh, everybody's going to look at that moment and say, oh, they ripped off the Dark Knight. And I thought, oh, I don't want people to be taken out of the movie in this moment and comment on the fact that they think we're ripping off Dark Knight. But obviously the scene is it's different. It's just that there's no, the mountain of cash. There's just no way around it.
Here's how fans interpret that. They take it as a positive. They say, that's awesome. That's clearly an homage to the Dark Knight. And awesome. Well done.
I've seen people say that. And so it's funny that like how turned around I was on how people would react to things. So, but we talked about it. And I think it was, it sounds like it was probably Jim Krieg, but really it might've been Butch, because Butch is so no nonsense and has such a clear vision on things. I'm sure, and I can hear it in his voice, just being like, you know, who cares? You know, it's in the book. Like, you do the thing that's in the book. You know, that's the scene. If they don't get it, that's their problem. You know, I mean, I don't know that he said that. I don't even know if it was him, but in my mind, it makes sense that it was Butch who said, just do the thing that's in the book as for the movie, as the best we can do it. And so that's where the Dark Knight, it was more like, how do I navigate around things from the Dark Knight was my first instinct. And then Butch dispelled all that for me early on, which was good. And then eventually as I started, like the whole thing just became its own thing. You see that in part 2, I think more than part 1, where, you know, part 1 is even more faithful to specifics from the book. And part 2, there's a point where once you start sort of branching away from the narrative, you kind of have to follow those roads. And ultimately, in the end, I think we get back to where the point is and where we need to be for the Long Halloween. But we had to take some detours along the way. The big thing was Alberto not faking his death meant we had to change a lot of stuff. You know, the assassin that Falcone hires for Independence Day, in the script, he's called the coroner. That's his like you know, gangster name. And, you know, we never say it in the movie, but for me, it was supposed to be an homage to the fact that, yeah, we know, we know that we're changing this, but we couldn't do the coroner murder because the whole idea of him having records about Alberto not being dead and Carla investigating that, it all had to kind of shift and change. So it sort of becomes its own thing anyway.
Yeah.
So really, I don't know why I was worried about The Dark Knight.
Gotcha.
To your first point about Mad Hatter and Scarecrow. First of all, that Scarecrow stuff is so chillingly cool, isn't it? Like in terms of the animation, like it's beautiful. I talk about, you know, I will tell you every time we talk that I have a different favorite line in the movie. but another one of my favorite moments is when Scarecrow says, I think maybe I'm gonna misquote it now, but it's more about the last word. I think when he says "Happy Mother's Day, prick." Man, I just love him calling him a prick. I just think that is so perfect. You know, you never get to hear that sort of petty sort of insult to Batman. You know, the way that he sees him. The stuff with Scarecrow's mom, all that stuff is, you know, very much, you know, based in the history and the lore of the character, and it was fun to get to do that and make it part of the Mother's Day story. But the animation is what really just makes that whole sequence beautiful. The thing with Mad Hatter, this is just a weird, dumb footnote in my life, is you know, I wrote all of Hatter's dialogue. First of all, every line he has in the movie, except I think he has one in part 2 at the end, when they're going through the streets on their way to Falcone's penthouse, where there's one line where I think they added it in the record that I didn't write in the script. Every line I wrote for him is a quote from Lewis Carroll somewhere. It may not be from Alice in Wonderland, or, you know, but it is a Lewis Carroll quote, you know, from something. But I in the script, I wrote all of his dialogue the way that it's scripted, in the way that it's lettered in the book, where it's the alternating caps, you know, and very sing-songy, weird sounding thing. And after I was done with Long Halloween, I wrote Superman, Man of Tomorrow, and then I left to work on Transformers, War for Cybertron. Right after that, I worked on Masters of the Universe Revelation, in which I ended up writing episode 4, which was the episode that introduced the character Scareglow, who was a legacy character from the property, from the brand, that never made it onto screen. And Scareglow sounds a lot like Scarecrow, right? But more than that, I ended up writing all of Scareglow, as voiced by Tony Todd, by the way. Nice. I wrote all of it in the Mad Hatter font style, where it was alternating. And Kevin Smith, just like, you know, such a big Batman fan, and like immediately recognized it and loved it. And it took him to a place, and he heard the voice of Scareglow very, you know, immediately when he was reading the script. And he talks about this when he talks about the episode. But that was because something I just ripped off after working on Long Halloween and wanted to utilize, because you know, you're making a movie, sure, but it has to go, the pages have to go through a lot of eyes before it actually gets to the screen, or gets to the TV screen. And so you want to, wherever you can, you look for tricks to kind of shake things up a little bit and keep everybody invested in what they're reading. So I thought that Mad Hatter thing was so genius, and I really wanted to use it and rip it off and use it for Scareglow, which in retrospect is funny, because we always see Mad Hatter with Scarecrow in the Long Halloween. So you know, it's just a weird, dumb footnote, like I said, to sort of I can't wait to rip it off again and use it in something else. There's very few tricks like that you have with like a typewriter, you know, that you can use to shake up the page a little bit and get people's attention. So I'm very grateful to have learned that from the Long Halloween graphic novel.
Excellent.
And or comics, depending on how you look at it.
I think this just like our last conversation for me has been a real treat. It's been great getting all this insight, getting to talk to you. Bill and I said it when we were done talking to you the last time, but it's very generous of you, and it's awesome that you're very enthusiastic and passionate about this stuff, and you're very informative. And it's can't thank you enough for coming back to continue to shed some light on The Long Halloween. Because it's my favorite. It's my favorite. And I just loved this movie. So it's been great getting to talk to you about it.
It absolutely warms my heart, and I breathe a sigh of relief when guys like you like the movie. But really, I love talking to people who are, smart and have good questions and understand what I'm doing over here, what we're all doing over here. And I'll talk about this stuff until I'm blue in the face. So I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to explain myself, which is the way I look at all of these things. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go on the explaining myself tour once the thing comes out.
Would you like to plug anything before I say that? I'll say that I'll plug for you your new Shazam miniseries. I did read the first issue and I thought it was fantastic. Thanks. Second issue is coming up soon. I don't know if it's this Tuesday or next Tuesday.
It's this Tuesday.
This Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
This week on shelves, Shazam number 2 of 4, which spins out of my other series, Teen Titans Academy. I have to say, I hope people dig issue 2 of Shazam, because I don't know if people will like it, but I will say that it's my favorite comic book that I've ever written. Nice. And I haven't written that many, but it is right now my favorite for all kinds of reasons. It's not that it's monumental, it's not going to change the world. It's just, for me, it's the one that made the most sense and everything came together, and I loved it so much that I hope people like it. So check that out this week. Also, my Masters of the Universe Revelation comic book series from Dark Horse, which is a 4-issue prequel to the TV series, is out. Issue 2 came out this past week, so that's available now. And now you're going to be seeing comic books from me for a while, but not really any TV or movies or animation to speak of for now. Time here. What's that?
For now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't have anything like. I worked on a show that's going to happen, but I can't talk about that for Netflix. But other than that, no, I don't have anything going on. Hopefully somebody will ask me to do another one of these things someday.
There's comics. There's nothing wrong. It's comics. I mean, that's kind of why we're here. So they birthed it all.
Sure.
They birthed Captain Marvel, right, Bill?
Captain Marvel. He's Captain Marvel to me, damn it. Still.
Listen, if you read my books, you'll see that I take little opportunities here and there to refer to that guy as the captain, wherever I can, because Shazam's the wizard. I don't understand.
Shazam is the wizard. Yes, I've been saying that. It drives me nuts. I could get off another tangent on this.
Listen, I wish I could.
I'll stop.
I wish I could change that. Like, unfortunately, there are cooler heads at DC who won't let me just change the name of the guy. But for legal reasons, I guess I don't know. I don't understand any of that stuff. But I certainly try to sneak in, the captain.
The captain. Yes, I can dig that.
All right. Guys, I really appreciate it, and thank you for being so supportive of the movies and of everything else. I just like what you guys do. As you can see, I like what Ryan's doing over there.
Appreciate it.
So keep on going. One of these days, maybe we'll have something else.
Come back anytime to talk about anything. Yeah.
I hope people buy these movies, because if they don't, then I don't think we'll get that double release. Where they'll put the movies together into one movie. Mm-hmm. Which they're talking about doing for next year. But that only happens if people buy it. So please buy them.
There you go. Please
buy
it.
Yeah, buy them. Yes, for sure.
I've never gotten to do? I've never gotten to record a commentary track for anything.
Oh, that would be cool.
I would love to record a commentary track for this.
The long commentary for The Long Halloween. There you go.
If they don't do it, then someday when I'm retired, you'll see me and Chris Palmer and Butch and Jim. We'll all sit around and just record our own commentary track for it, and you guys will release it.
Yes,
that'd be great.
We'll have you record it.
Sure.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, guys.
Tim.
All right. Thanks again to Tim Sheridan for coming on. So now it's just me, Micah, and Ryan. And we're just going to just recap what you thought about what Tim had to say discussing part 2. There was a lot of things I thought how he wrote the Mad Hatter's dialogue was interesting. And now when I watch the movie again, when he talks, I will see that in my mind for some reason. So this is the first time, Michael, you've done something like this with getting Tim Sheridan on here. And then I know you loved the movie and did a great review. So what do you think about what Tim had to say about it?
It was really cool, one, just to be on the show and just listen to him talk. Because honestly, it was just like kind of Tim's show. We were just here, a part of it, which that's a good thing. I mean, he's very passionate. It's awesome to see that he really cares about not only what he's writing about, but, just everything else. Like, he loves Batman as much as we do, if not more. I love the film, and I don't know, I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd say everyone who follows the Batman comics. I only read normally the big ones, but I do watch a lot of movies, and I just love to see the different film elements, because I could definitely tell before he even said it. I was going to ask him, you wrote this, the way you wrote it, it seems like you wrote it as if it was going to be a live action film. Yeah. I think it would work live action.
For sure.
But I just love hearing him talk. I love the film. It's definitely a film first, not just, a direct inspiration. It definitely stands on its own. I love how he talked about how the artwork kind of had to be different to kind of set the tone early, that this is not just a direct adaptation. I don't know why that's such a big deal. I deal with that with video games a lot. Like, when you remake an old video game, like, people want it to be exactly the same. They want the same voice actors. They want the characters to look exactly the same. I'm like, you already have that. Like, if you don't like this movie, even if you don't like it, like, you still have The Long Halloween. Like, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't like it, why do you have to let them know? Just don't watch it, or just don't talk about it. You still have the original, story, and you have a sequel in Dark Victory if you like that as well. So overall, I loved it. It was awesome being a part of this with Tim, just hearing him talk. He literally, I had like 10 questions. He answered every single one of them. So I was like, God damn,
I didn't even think.
What am I going to ask him?
And I texted you and I said, I didn't even think that was such a great question to ask about, because Matt Reeves watched a lot of stuff to get ready for the Batman, and to ask him, did he do that for The Long Halloween? I thought his question, I thought his answer was interesting. I thought the question was great. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot like Zodiac. If you've seen that film, it's definitely like they're very similar. And then the answer of the killer isn't really answered, in that film. Like, it's kind of ambiguous, and it's even as a real story, we still don't really exactly know who that person was. But I did like he took the film in a different direction, where he did give more answers. Like, he tied things together that were kind of not left unfinished in the novel, but they were just left ambiguous on purpose. I kind of like how it kind of seemed like he wrote it as this is how he interpreted the novel when he read it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's still ambiguous, so you can interpret it different things in different ways. But I like how Batman was with Greta at the end, and you got that scene with them together. But yeah, overall, I loved it. It was awesome.
What do you give what's your score combined as one movie?
I give it an A. I think together I'd give it an A. I did like part 1 more, but that's just a nitpicky thing, because normally, like, for mystery films or any film, I normally like the beginning more, just because in my mind, I'm such an imaginative person that in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to go this way. It's definitely going this way. And then sometimes it doesn't like meet these insane expectations that I have in my head. But that's just me. Like, that doesn't make the film bad. Like, I'm not going to say the film's bad. Obviously it was great. And I did, like I said, I liked how he tied a lot of those loose threads together. It was fantastic. It's some of the best. It's the best Batman animated film I think I've seen in a long time. Like, that, where I watched it, I was like, damn, I want to recommend this to everyone.
Yeah.
Not just like, the few friends I have that are interested in comics. Like, I just tell anyone to watch this. It's that good.
All right, Lauer, what you got? You fired up again for Tim?
Oh, I'm all fired up. All fired up for Tim. I think since the last time that you and I recorded with him and spoke to him, you and I have both continued to speak to him throughout this past month and a half. And he's just, take the Batman part aside, like I was saying there at the end, and it wasn't just to try and flatter him or anything. It's just true that he's very genuine. He seems very enthusiastic. He's very optimistic, and insightful with all this stuff. And if you follow him on Twitter, he's just giving you cool information and bits on his process and their process of making these two movies. And so that's always something I'm really interested in. I think that that's really cool. And he didn't disappoint at all here for this interview either. And just the information on this stuff. And yeah, I'll talk to him again, bring him back on, and I don't know, I'll moderate a battle that you guys between Shazam and Captain Marvel, you know, like what should the real name be?
I'm actually I'm gonna read that now that I know that he's writing it. So
I don't have a ton of knowledge on the history of the character, but because I mean it was Tim's and it was announced that it just come out, so I read it and I really like that first issue. And it's easier for me to jump onto something knowing it has an endpoint, and it's like this is 4 issues, period.
Yes,
much easier for me to jump onto something, be like, cool, I'll read all 4 and as a complete story. And I recommend it. It was a fun first issue, and the second one's about to come out. But
have y'all checked out the Transformers and the Masters of the Universe stuff?
I've watched 3. I know I don't do good with binging I know stuff's available, but I want it to last. So I am slowly working my way through Masters of the Universe. And my next episode to watch is Tim's episode of Masters of the Universe. And I find it's fun. I've watched it on Saturday mornings just for a nostalgic vibe. But yeah, I think that's been fun. I haven't watched Transformers yet, but I'll get there too. Micah, what do you think?
I haven't watched it, but I've had a lot of people tell me you should watch that Masters of the Universe show on Netflix. And I'm like, oh, did you know that the guy who wrote some of that is this? So I want to definitely, obviously, after the films, I need to get into that. It's on the backlog for sure to get into Masters of the Universe. Netflix has a ton of amazing animated shows. I watched the Castlevania show not that long ago. That show's phenomenal. So, yeah.
All right, let's get on out of here. All right, Lauer, just get the whole thing grade. You didn't put a letter grade on it, and I'm sure I know what it is.
We've got an A+ right here.
Okay.
I know there's some things. The Dark Knight, I walked out of my first viewing and I'm like, that's my favorite Batman movie I've ever seen. I think that's my favorite movie I've ever seen. And that has not changed in the 13 years that it's been out. This, upon watching, I think I can claim that it's my favorite animated Batman movie. It's one of my favorite Batman movies because it's collected. Let's be serious. I'm not going to say part 1's number 3, part 2 is number 2. It's 1. It's up there. I love those. Under the Red Hood, I thought was a pretty amazing animated Batman movie. And it was right there with Mask of the Phantasm for me, with Lego Batman right behind them. And I think this has jumped all of them. I love it. I think this is great. I think it toes the line definitely of inspired by, but being its own thing, which I think you and I said last time about this too. And I said on the review of part 1 with Garrett for the podcast, it's really good adaptation, really good. So like Micah said, I think I'd recommend it to people that aren't big into comics.
Yeah.
Just like, this is a good Batman movie. It's just a good Batman movie. It's a good movie.
Absolutely is. I gave it a straight up A. I gave it an A. I think it's one of the best Batman. I think just in general, it's one of the best Batman films, period. It's obviously one of the best animated films. It's up there with Mask of the Phantasm. It's up there with Lego Batman movie, which I adore. And, Under the Red Hood is really good, but this one bumps. Yeah. It's gotta be, it's equal to or right a notch below Mask of the Phantasm. And I would like to see the story continue. Again, I don't want a straight up adaptation of Dark Victory, but I'd love it inspired by, like they did with The Long Halloween. So with that said, y'all plug whatever you want. Micah, plug all your stuff there.
Okay. If you want to hear me talk about more things for some reason, if you like what I had to say, you can find me on YouTube on Colin A Broadcasting. And then from there, I'm sure you could find, if you're that interested to go there, you'll find the rest. It'll be linked in the description of my videos. So yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Sure. All right, Ryan.
Well, you can follow my stuff on BOF proper, where I review a lot of comic books and some movies and such, interview with Lee Bermejo, and reviewing that Batwing lamp that I always love to plug. as well as a Lego Batman cowl that I talked Bill into
Yeah,
buying
it's over
and put
here.
together.
Yeah.
Definitely highly recommended. You can follow my show, the Batman Book Club, which, I mean, how geek out moment, how freaking cool is that Tim bought one of the shirts for the show?
It is. Yeah.
I mean, it was, oh my God. But you can follow the Batman Book Club, my podcast, the Batman BC on Twitter. Bill's been on a few times, most recently talking that Joker's 5-way revenge story. Micah recently has been on, and we talked Batman Ego, as well as maybe what aspects Matt Reeves drew from that story to put in his new movie. That was a great discussion too. So yeah, follow that on Twitter at the Batman BC.
Micah's a little bit excited for the Batman next year.
No, I'm fired up.
Just a little bit.
It's hard to contain that sometimes. Yeah. Whenever people ask me about it, they're like, "Oh, what do you think about that new Batman movie with that Twilight guy?" It's hard to not just blow up and just go off.
Do you have 45 minutes? Sit down. Let's
Charlie
talk.
Day up on the thing where he's connecting like all the dots. That's me. I go off. But I can't believe, Ryan, you didn't get the backwards hat memo for the day. Like, we all had backwards hats on. What's going on?
I know. I look stupid in hats. I think I have a weird head or something. Maybe I don't look any better without one, but yeah, I look really stupid with a hat. I want it to work. I really do. But
all right. For me, just go to Batman on Film. That's all I got. All right. So for Micah Ramey, Ryan Lauer, spelled like lower. I see I did that right, didn't I?
You did. You got it. Well done, Bill.
I am Bill. Thanks for watching. And again, major props to Tim. He's the star of this deal for sure.
For sure.
And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, whatever format you got it. And we'll catch you next time.